This particularly nasty flu season falls on the 100th anniversary of the biggest flu pandemic in history. The 1918 outbreak is estimated to have killed between 20 and 50 million people worldwide. A reminder that one of the world's most common diseases is also one of its deadliest.
There is a $10,000 reward for information about the mysterious disappearance of a CDC scientist. Timothy Cunningham is an epidemiologist in Atlanta and has been missing for more than 2 weeks.
He left work early on February 12th saying he felt sick. Omar Villafranca has more on the search to find him.
Investigators returned to the woods around Timothy Cunningham's house Monday, searching for more clues.
I'm not so sure what else we can do with that area.
His family found his wallet, his car, even his beloved dog, all left behind in his Atlanta home.
Timothy has been unaccounted for since the 12th.
Cunningham's father, Terrell, drove from Maryland to Georgia after not hearing from his son for 2 days. His parents and other family members have been putting up missing posters throughout Cunningham's neighborhood, and they're trying to get the word out about his disappearance through the media.
He has such a history of being so responsible and dependable that I think that is what puts us all in at such disbelief.
Cunningham graduated from Morehouse College and earned advanced degrees from Harvard. The 35-year-old CDC scientist reportedly lived alone. His next-door neighbor, Viviana Torrey, says Cunningham said something odd to her husband the day he disappeared.
He told my husband to tell his wife, me, to erase his cell phone number from my cell phone.
The mystery begins with this report that came out weeks before Dr. Cunningham went missing. Disastrous flu shot is causing deadly flu outbreak. A CDC doctor has warned this year's disastrous flu shot may be responsible for the deadly flu epidemic sweeping the country. Some of the patients I've administered the flu to this year have died, the doctor said, adding, "I don't care who you are, this scares the crap out of me." We have seen people dying across the country of the flu, and one thing nearly all of them have in common is they got the flu shot. Scientists were worried this year's flu season was going to be rough, and their fears have been proven well-founded. The flu season is off to a record-breaking start, with the CDC reporting widespread flu activity from coast to coast. Many health officials believe that 2018 will ultimately be the worst flu outbreak that we have experienced since 1918.
It's called the Centers for Disease Control, but there are serious concerns tonight about how well the CDC controls dangerous germs at its own labs after yet another safety lapse. Today, the CDC says it mishandled a shipment of deadly flu virus. This comes after a mishap involving anthrax and the discovery of smallpox virus that was misplaced at the National Institutes of Health. The head of the CDC today, Dr. Tom Frieden, said, quote, he was astonished at the latest breach and angry. Here's Dr. John LaPook.
For the third time in a month, the CDC acknowledged deadly pathogens were handled incorrectly in government labs. CDC Director Dr. Tom Frieden.
So I'm upset, I'm angry, I've lost sleep over it, and I'm working around the clock to make sure we do everything possible to resolve it.
In the latest case revealed today, CDC workers somehow lost track of samples of the dangerous H5N1 influenza virus. The virus wound up being added to a shipment in March from a secure CDC lab in Atlanta to one run by the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Athens, Georgia. The CDC says both facilities are highly secure and nobody was ever at risk. This comes just after 60-year-old vials of smallpox virus were found in a cardboard box at this NIH building in Maryland. Test results revealed today showed some of the virus is alive. And last month, the agency reported lab workers may have been exposed to live anthrax after sloppy procedures were used at a CDC facility.
The sudden disappearance of 35-year-old Timothy Cunningham has left heartbroken loved ones and colleagues baffled, and an old dog named Bo longing for his best friend. Monday, the acting CDC director issued the agency's first statement since the epidemiologist left his office at the CDC facility in Chambly in the middle of the day, exactly 1 month ago. Dr. Ann Schuckett saying, in part, if Tim reads this message, we hope you come home soon. But the acting director also took time to clarify issues regarding Cunningham's career. In the statement, she refers to news coverage that Commander Cunningham recently did not receive a promotion. This information is incorrect, she says. Dr. Schuckett's statement goes on to say Cunningham received an early promotion and exceptional proficiency promotion to commander effective July 1st, 2017. That statement contradicts what Atlanta police said during a news conference on February 27th.
I think that it was pretty consistent that he was definitely upset. He told several co-workers that he was and that he was expecting this promotion. So we don't have any doubt that he was upset that he didn't receive the promotion.
Last week, Cunningham's father released these photos of Tim's July promotional ceremony. Monday's statement from the CDC surely validates the family's efforts to set the record straight, saying over and above any of his assignments at CDC, his early promotion within the United States Public Health Service reflects his excellence as an officer and an employee.
The flu virus continues to grip the nation, according to reports from the CDC. The virus has now claimed the lives of 53 children. Trinity Chavez has more tonight.
This nationwide flu outbreak is showing no mercy, and it's also showing no signs of letting up as the death toll increases.
We're seeing increases in total deaths from pneumonia and influenza, primarily in adults. So unfortunately, hospitalizations are increasing, as are deaths.
From closing schools to overcrowded emergency rooms, the list of influenza cases keep growing. The CDC's latest influenza report shows that at least 53 children have died this flu season, including 16 just last week. An 8-year-old from Queens died Monday after being rushed to the hospital with flu symptoms, and another unidentified child in New York passed away due to flu-related illnesses as well.
It's a major threat right now. 1 out of 10 people dying the past week died from pneumonia or influenza. We are seeing a year where it's quite challenging to handle the flu.
The CDC reports that nearly 15,000 people have been hospitalized for flu-related illnesses. That's double the number from last season.
As of this date, at this hospital alone, we've seen 432 cases of flu. The year prior to that was in the 40s, so in the mid-40s.
Brian Herndon of Fort Worth, Texas, barely survived the flu and pneumonia. After being hospitalized over 4 weeks on a breathing tube, his organs shut down. Blood clots forced doctors to amputate both of his feet and 9 of his fingers.
This year, we're seeing the H3N2 influenza virus dominate. Years where that strain dominates tend to be more severe. We've also seen that the vaccine against the H3N2 viruses tends to be less effective than vaccine against other strains. Those two combinations probably account for some of the severity.
Dallas County has just reported its 6th flu death of the season, a 60-year-old patient in Dallas who died from complications of the virus. As with other flu deaths, the county is keeping medical details confidential, including whether the patient had underlying health problems. Texas is one of 21 states with high flu activity, according to the Centers for Disease Control. And this map shows you the flu is impacting most of the south and western regions of the U.S.
Here in the U.S., hospitals from California to Georgia have been setting up special flu tents to cope with the influx of patients. Over 4,000 deaths a week in the U.S. are being blamed on the flu.
It's hard to make enough capacity at times to see all those patients, so we've ended up putting up what we call a disaster tent or a surge tent. We put it up January 3, and what we use it is for overflow for our patients.
And it's not just the young and old that are getting very sick.
I was throwing up all night, and I was just I thought it was something more serious than the flu because I've never had the flu like this before. You know, I've never had to throw up or even come into the hospital for the flu.
The X factor for public health, the World Health Organization, adding to exist illness called Disease X to its annual list of public health concerns. That list includes Ebola, Zika, and SARS.
In the United States, there is now a confirmed case of a superbug that no antibiotic can apparently combat. A Pennsylvania woman has developed an infection that officials call, quote, a nightmare bacteria. CDC Director Dr. Tom Frieden sounded the alarm today, saying that this antibiotic-resistant strain could be, quote, the end of the road for antibiotics. Let's bring in CNN Chief Medical Correspondent Dr. Sanjay Gupta. Sanjay, do we know how this woman became infected, and what do we know about this so-called nightmare bacteria?
Well, we don't know how this woman became infected. What we do know is that she went to a clinic. She was not in the hospital when this bacteria was found. We also know that she hadn't been traveling overseas, so this isn't something that could have been brought back from another country, for example. So typically what happens is when there's a lot of antibiotic use in a community, bacteria become resistant. This particular bacteria, something known as E. coli, something we've talked about a lot, does have a lot of different classes of antibiotics to try and treat it, at least 7 different types of antibiotics, not just antibiotics, but entire classes of antibiotics. And this particular bacteria didn't respond to any of those, and that's the big concern. I will tell you, Jake, people have been anticipating something like this happening for some time, and we don't know that for her, her immune system may still fight off this bacteria, but I think it's a little bit of a indication of what might be to come, more of these types of bacteria.
And what does it take to theoretically develop a new antibiotic that might be able to fight this new strain?
Well, there's sort of 3 ways to look at this. One is that are there existing classes of antibiotics that you bolster up, that you make more powerful? The class of antibiotics works, it's just not strong enough.
Youngstown police were busy this weekend fighting not only crime, but also raccoons. Police got several calls from homeowners about raccoons in their yards. But in this case, investigators don't believe they had rabies. First News reporter Molly Reed has been looking into this story and is live tonight with some important information.
Yeah, Amanda, you can see we're right on the edge of Mill Creek Park here, and if we turn this way, this is Old Furnace Road, and you can see there's some houses down here. Now, this is one of the areas where police and the city have been getting a lot of complaints about these raccoons that they say are, quote, acting strange. Now, I talked to one of these homeowners down the street, Robert Coggeshall, and he's actually a wildlife photographer, and he took some of the pictures when he was out in his front yard, and one of these raccoons approached him and his dogs. He said that he was walking around, the raccoons started following him, and then they went inside, and he eventually got someone over to euthanize it.
Stand up on his hind legs, which I've never seen a raccoon do before, and he would show his teeth, and then he would fall over backwards and go into almost like a comatose condition. He'd be that way for a few minutes. He'd come out of it, walk around, and then he'd do the same thing again. See a raccoon give them a wide berth because they can move surprisingly fast if they have to.
And again, Robert had a couple of friends that do work with wildlife. He called one of them over and they actually euthanized that raccoon in the backyard. But there's been several calls this weekend to Youngstown police where the police officers actually had to go to homes and euthanize the raccoons. Now, we did talk to ODNR today to find out what is going on. If this is not rabies, what is this disease and how...
If you haven't heard about chronic wasting disease by now, then you may already be a zombie. This neurological disease has been taking a toll on deer populations across the country and may have the potential to affect humans.
There are Washington officials, especially those who work in the intelligence agencies, that are flocking to these doomsday camps and partnerships in them, places called the Fortitude Ranch and others. That one is near D.C., and it helps people prepare for pending doom. Here now, Dr. Drew Miller. I was going to say Dr. Doom, but you're not. You're Dr. Drew Miller, CEO of Fortitude Ranch and a retired Air Force colonel. Doctor, good to have you here tonight. So what is Fortitude Ranch? How does it work?
Sure. Fortitude Ranch is a recreational and survival community. So in good times, we're a great place to go to vacation and hunt. But in bad times, we're a survival retreat, a place where you can go to survive a pandemic or a long-term electrical outage or some other disaster that leads to a collapse in economic activity and loss of law and order.
And you're genuinely concerned that this is something that we all need to be prepared for.
We absolutely do. Government is not prepared to handle a pandemic. Government officials will be protected. We're not that far from Mount Weather where government officials will go. Wealthy people can go to places like Survival Condo if you have millions of dollars. But most of us will be on our own with the loss of law and order from a pandemic or loss of the electrical system. Police won't be able to protect you in your neighborhoods. There's going to be gangs and people out there marauding for food. And so you need to be able to protect yourself.
But horrible. It's horrible to imagine. But these are growing. How many Fortitude Ranches are there around the country? I know you don't say exactly where they are, but they're mostly in the middle of nowhere, right?
Well, we locate in remote areas. We're in West Virginia, west of D.C., and we're also in Colorado, and we're raising funds now to expand across the U.S.
And how would you characterize interest in them? Has it exploded over recent years?
It's been high and it keeps getting higher. The North Korean threat is bad. For example, former CIA Director James Woolsey warned last year that just one North Korean nuclear weapon that's optimized for electromagnetic pulse exploding over the United States could take down our electric system, not for weeks or months, but for over a year.
So if you're
the former CIA Director warned.
If that happened, I just want to, how long could you survive at a Fortitude Ranch if this unforeseeable, horrible incident were to happen?
Well, we produce our own food, so we can last forever. But as Admiral Woolsey warned, if there's this kind of an attack and the electric system goes down, there'll be societal collapse. There won't be law and order. There'll be mass starvation. He estimated that up to 90% of the U.S. population could potentially perish in a disaster like that. And the worst threat we face is pandemics. We're overdue for a natural pandemic, and there are bioengineered viral pandemics that could just cause a catastrophe that we can't imagine today.
This has been uplifting. I want to thank you.
And I'm the Fulton County Chief Medical Examiner. So today I'm here to tell you about the information about the body that was recovered from the Chattahoochee the other evening. So the body was positively ID'd today by dental records as Mr. Timothy Cunningham. Yesterday the autopsy was performed and we had a tentative ID based on body identification marks. So the autopsy was completed yesterday afternoon. There was no signs of any foul play. Right now, the preliminary cause of death is drowning, but since the investigation is still open, we do not have a manner of death as whether it's an accident, a suicide, or anything other than that.
I'm the Major Crimes Commander for the Atlanta Police Department. That includes our Homicide and Missing Persons Unit. I think as both the doctor and the fire department have indicated, we've located Dr. Timothy Cunningham. This is obviously a major step in the missing persons investigation now that he's been located, and it's likely going to draw mostly to a close the investigation. We do have some other issues that we need to take up, but at this point, we have no indication of foul play involving Dr. Cunningham. We're waiting on an ME's report to be finalized. As she said, she's still going through the information to try and determine, exactly we believe it's drowning, but we want to make sure there's no other indicators or other problems, and we need to see if there's a tox screen that comes back that may tell us something. But, we're waiting on some reports, but largely I want to emphasize that to this point, there's been no indicators of foul play. So that's kind of where we stand right now.
And are there jogging trails along the river that you might have been jogging on? Is that one of the things you're looking at, or can you tell us about that, how you might have accessed it?
I don't think we're, barring some new information coming forward, and obviously we're checking, we'll check video, we'll check places we think he might have got access to the river, but barring new information coming forward, we may never be able to tell you how he got into the river. So we're not sure where he got into the river at or at this point. So we just don't have those answers at this time.
But from an investigator standpoint, would he jog without his keys, without his wallet, without his ID, and that kind of thing?
Well, I said initially that we found it extremely unusual that he was missing any forms of personal identification as keys. We found that to be an unusual circumstance in a missing person's case, just kind of period. As to his personal habits, I can't say. If he didn't intend to purchase anything, maybe he didn't, need his wallet. I don't really know why he didn't have the things that he had in his pockets. I do know that we recovered 3 crystals from one of his pockets, and he was an avid collector of these kind of crystals or rocks or rare stones, and 3 of them were located in a pocket in his clothing at the time that he was recovered.
As this mystery unfolds, my question is, why did Timothy Cunningham carry 3 rare crystals with him? Could he have known he was sick and possibly dying? Was he performing some kind of ritual or healing with these crystals?
In the 20-some years that I've been working with crystals and doing energy healing, correcting chakras and auras, working in 5th dimension and beyond, I have never encountered a crystal so powerful and so much filled with consciousness that it has the ability to diagnose and correct the issues while we're working with it. For you metaphysicians and crystal enthusiasts, this is something that you have never experienced before. I know many of you have worked with Russian Lemurians and Phoenikites and Euclase, but this is something that is beyond both of those or all 3 of those crystals put together. Using these crystals takes us into as far as the 12-dimensional realms, and those of you that have worked on those levels know exactly what we mean. These crystals, while come from the same mine, are very individual, and each crystal speaks to you, or it tells you which one is right for you.
So, Ricky, a lot of people will say, well, what's the big deal? Just pretty rocks. How would you answer those people?
First of all, I will agree with them. They're very pretty rocks.
But they would deny this consciousness or life in them.
And I meet all kind of persons through my work with the crystals, and I will divide some people who are maybe more developed or more awakened and speak the spirit path and language. Then there is no need to convince. Then I just talk. We go straight through the information. And some people who are, let's say, sometimes more mathematical, or what I don't see does not exist, or language like that, which is fine because they're just not aware. And my work with the crystals, with these people, is not to convince.
Yes.
Is not to have them change their beliefs. My idea, and that's how it works, I ask the people to open a little window to see other information. In Hebrew it's so hard, just to see what there is there. And usually what happens with those people who don't believe or don't speak the language, I will start with information that is not voodoo. I will explain the chemistry. I will explain how they were born. I will explain the physical formation, because each crystal has a physical formation. I will explain how they're being used in the industry, in the computer,
for sure,
in the current lasers. So I will explain how it's not because they don't talk conscience, these people who think they're pretty rocks.
Yes.
So I will show them how crystals are being interrelated in our life. And usually what happens with those who don't believe, and they will sit like that, and I ask people to take, just to take, with no thinking, with no explanations, like a reading.
Yes.
That we do with crystals, and I don't know the person. And I start do the reading from the crystals. I don't know the person. I will do the reading from the crystals, and they will be amazed. And then it's not that they start to believe, but the window is open.
What do you mean you do a reading?
What's a reading?
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
So what's a reading? A reading is a way of us communicating through the crystals. So when I do reading, the person who comes for the reading, they will pick certain crystals. There's a methodical, but doesn't matter. And I will read, I will talk the information that's coming out from the crystals.
Timothy Cunningham went to work on February 12th for the Centers for Disease Control, but he left early and was never seen alive again. On Tuesday night, his body was pulled from the Chattahoochee River. Now, we brought you that recovery effort as breaking news on the late feed. But how did he get there and how did he die? What really happened? Natisha Lance retraces his steps from his house to the river.
After 7 weeks of looking, Tim Cunningham has been found, but police are still trying to figure out exactly what happened to him and why. Friends have similar questions.
I just want to hear a cogent, believable story, something that fills in these huge gaps between the person that I know him to be.
Atlanta police say they believe Dr. Tim Cunningham drowned in the Chattahoochee River either by accident or suicide on February 12th. But it doesn't make sense to Jonathan Edwards, who has been friends with Cunningham for more than a decade.
Just to hear that, no foul play is suspected, and, the hint being that he would have done this to himself, I disagree with that.
Edwards says he spoke with Cunningham 4 days before he went missing.
And I didn't get the sense that he was dealing with anything that serious.
I just moved to Atlanta recently from California as part of my journey. And, today I went into a restaurant. And I guess that the water pipes, this is what they said, the water pipes along the Buffalo Highway burst. So they weren't using any water. And they were giving out bottled water. They even put like a jug of water in the restroom for people to wash their hands with. So this is my thing with that. So that CDC, I don't know what his title was for the CDC, but the guy that went missing from the CDC, it was weird because apparently he called his parents early that morning, and he sounded frantic, I guess, and then. I guess he texted his mother saying, "Are you awake?" But I guess she was asleep. And then he told his neighbor to delete his phone number out of their phone, which is weird too. And then he just goes missing. Of course, if you have any sense, you would understand that nobody just goes missing like that because they got passed over for a promotion, man. He's still missing to this day. The CDC, that's where they store all the diseases. They do tests, on these diseases. And I'm just wondering, I'm like, are they like subtly trying to say that the water's contaminated? I don't know, it's just weird. This guy from the CDC goes missing like last week, and now all of a sudden, the water's contaminated, and there have been restaurants that actually closed down for the day. I guess I'll just have to see how that goes tomorrow, but I just find that strange. I don't know, man. It could be working towards something. It could be nothing, but the pipes really could be something wrong with the pipes, but only time will tell. Y'all have a blessed one.